Let me first start with George Karl. I've heard some of the retort from some people in the league. Here's my biggest question. Is anything that he has said untrue?
Well, it's a good point, Doug, and here's the thing. The criticisms that he has of Carmelo, of J.R. Smith, of Kenyon Martin back then, I would say he made himself pretty well clear in those days that's how he felt. I think it's more the timing of it and the feeling that he's out of he coached these guys a long time ago, and he should not have gone back in on guys who maybe evolved in their careers, evolved in their lives. I think all those guys he talked about have. There's no question. So I don't have the exact wording in front of me of exactly, but I would just say they are not new criticisms to that team at that time, which, listen, I had those same conversations with Chauncey Billups when he got to Denver, when he was traded there, and the mindset of the group, the attitude of the group. So, he's not the first one to ever say it about that era of the Nuggets. I just think it gets back to, get over it, George, and sort of fade away with some I guess with a little bit
dignity,
more honor.
Yeah. I got, yeah. But here's because when I read kind of more thorough parts of the excerpts, I actually think he takes a lot of the accountability away from the players. It's almost as, and he said I struggled to relate because I came from a 2-parent home. I had Dean Smith. I went to college for 4 years. I'm from the suburbs. These guys from tough upbringings. It was almost like saying, I don't actually blame them for their shortcomings as men at that age. And he was kind of painting a picture as to why. I kind of thought it was a fair depiction, and it showed the struggles of a coach trying to relate to a generation of players from a different background. Are we not able at all to go back and tell any negative background stories about any, since when is that completely off? I wasn't aware that's completely off limits.
Yeah, and I think it's because of who's telling this, who's saying this, because I think the guys, and part of the reason I think those guys took it so personally was that the criticisms that George has of players and of these players, whether it's selfishness, just chasing money, however you want to frame it, these are all things George has been guilty of. And that George was incredibly difficult to work with. He was uncoachable as a coach. You talk to the general managers, many of the GMs he got fired in Denver after a season in which he was the NBA's coach of the year. Now, they lost in the first round, and they felt like they underachieved. But that's not exactly why Denver fired him. They fired him because they couldn't live with him day in and day out, that he was unmanageable. I think that's what hit with Carmelo, with Kenyon Martin, with J.R. Smith and others, is that the things that he was critical of them about, George is guilty of many of the same things within his own profession. I mean, and I just did an essay on this, a video essay on this for the Vertical. That'll be up pretty soon. But when George was out of coaching before he got the Kings job, remember George on Twitter literally actively campaigning for jobs for coaches who were in trouble in jobs, and campaigning for jobs once there was an interim coach in place. Never mind what George was doing behind the scenes to get those jobs. And you grew up in a coaching family, Doug. You know that's that's about the worst thing you can do as a coach, is to try to get somebody else's job. Well, George was always doing that, especially in his later years when he was more desperate. I think that's why all of this bothers people so much more, because of how George has carried himself.
Adrian Wojnarowski joining us on the Doug Gottlieb Show on CBS Sports Radio. So what is wrong with the Portland Trail Blazers?
I think this team's going to play better. I really do. I think defensively they've really struggled. They signed Festus Ezeli hoping he would be able to play, a role in the middle. protect the rim. He's out for the season. He's probably never going to play for them. They certainly missed Aminu, who's been out with an injury, and one of their better front court defenders. I think they'll play better. I still think they will find their way back to 500, which is still underachieving for what people thought this group might do. I think they're a little bit of a victim of their own success last year, getting to the conference semifinals, and really sort of being one of the darlings in the league last year. It's always difficult when you have a team where a lot of guys got rewarded in the offseason, and either guys, they're trying to either play up to the money they made,
yep,
or guys might be coasting a little bit because of that. I'm not so sure that's what it is, but I think they've got a lot of assets to be able to make some deals here before the deadline or next summer. They don't have to go out and do something now. They're not catching Golden State in the West. They're not beating San Antonio in a playoff series. And so I think they'll be patient and go forward. But I do think they're going to play better here.